So welcome to part 2 of fixing up this brush hog with my 90 amp flex core wire welder from Harbor Freight. Here I'm just fixing another patch on the front of this deck. This front piece was pretty bad. It was pretty rusted through. And I'm just welding it up. I got all the grass out from underneath it, so we won't have any issues with grass buildup with us using this. And I still have all that bed frame and stuff to put in. And I think I do that, yeah, I do that later in this video. But I have to say I really underestimated how much welding I had to do on this brush hog. I've been at this for a few days now, just welding and more welding and more welding. This piece back here was the one that had that cut in it, and it sort of looks better with the patch in it, I guess. I mean, once I get it painted up. I haven't decided if I want to grind down the welds or not. You'd sort of barely be able to see these patches if I ground the welds down, but you know, the problem with doing that is you're kind of grinding away strength, and in my opinion, for at least this thin, it's like 1/16 of an inch sheet metal that this deck is made out of, for a brush hog, I think it's too thin. And this was the second big piece that I had to do on the side, because the sides were all rusted out. And it was these two pieces, big long pieces here, the one on this side and the one on the other one, were by far the most difficult pieces to put into this and get everything lined up and tack it in place. And I used the floor jack a few times to bend up the deck to where I needed it to be, and then tack it all in place. And then of course I can let the jack down and fully weld it. And this was that first one. But each of these pieces is about 45 inches long. I mentioned this in the last video, but I guess I'll mention it again. That's in just doing the top of this, it's fully welded. It's roughly 16 feet in just these two, no, yeah, 16 feet in just these two pieces. That doesn't include anything else that I've welded on this. But I had some problems with the sheet metal warping and stuff in this today as I'm working on it. I'm behind in editing videos from what you guys are seeing, so this piece here, I mean, it seemed to weld up fine. The welder really doesn't have any problems welding this. I did switch. If there was a gap between the sheet metal here, I would put it on minimum. And if there wasn't a gap, I could get away with putting it on maximum and putting as much heat into that as I possibly could, I guess, to make sure that it was as strong as it could be. And I did grind everything back, you know, cleaning it before I welded, or as much as I could. Obviously, I can't get the grinder into these corners where the angle iron meets the plate for the gearbox, and I just had to do the best that I could with what I had. And I'm kind of glad I fully welded this. I've been reading some of the comments, and some people are thinking that by not fully welding it, the deck is able to flex if it needs to. But, you know, if it flexes too much, it'll crack and break. And even just with me walking on it, I mean, you can see it flexing. And the problem with not fully welding it, I'm not saying anyone's wrong or anything here. It's just, when you don't fully weld it, you get water that sits in between where the seams go, and then it rusts everything out. And that's what happened on this brush hog. Where the two pieces met, water would sit in there, and dirt and grass and clippings and stuff from mowing would sit in there, and then it would rust it away. And I'm just trying my hardest to eliminate that. Here, my brother and I are actually figuring out a spot for, this is going to be I put a big, I guess it's like it's not a hook, it's like a big loop, or a cradle. I guess I'll call it a cradle. But this is for the PTO shaft to put into, and I think I got it pretty much out of the way for the most part. And I just, the problem with the PTO shaft just being on the deck, well, one, it rubs the paint and stuff, so again, we're creating rust problems. But I want to get the PTO shaft up off the ground, because it's kind of dragging in the ground as we use the tractor, because the 3-point hydraulics in this machine have so much leak down that it's just, it's kind of in the way. And actually I was worried about bending it a couple times, just because it doesn't lift up as high as I would like, and it also drifts down. So having the cradle there for the PTO shaft is really, it's a great thing to have, and I'm really glad I thought of putting it in and just welding it in place, and then you can just pick the PTO shaft up off the tractor, and then cradle it in there, and it shouldn't fall off. It's got a pretty good hook on it, so I don't think or a bend. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime too soon, or the PTO shaft will fall out. But here I think I'm tacking up the bed frame. Yep, that's what I'm doing. And these pieces here seem to have added quite a bit of strength to this deck, which I'm glad I did. This deck is just, it's so thin. And who knows, it may have been thin to start with, but it's really thin now after use and just age. I do think this brush hog has sat out for a lot of its life, and that's why I'm having to do everything that I'm doing. I've had some people think I should stick weld this, and to be honest with you, I'm not the greatest stick welder. I'm much better at wire feed welding, which is what I'm doing here, and I can go faster, and I don't have to reload each stick electrode. All I do is just pull the trigger and go. Pretty much it's very simple for me to do, and I'm way more comfortable with this machine. My other welder is a 70 amp stick welder from Harbor Freight, and that one has 20 less amps of power, which sometimes these 110 volt machines, you need everything that they've got, and it's just, there's really no two ways around it. Here I'm finally welding that hook on. My brother and I were talking about it before, but this hook is fantastic. It's being used a lot, and it keeps the end of the PTO shaft up out of the dirt, and it shouldn't get caught on anything. So, but yeah, I really underestimated how much welding this deck needed. I've been at this for a few days now, just welding and welding and welding. And I got tired and fed up of the smoke always coming back and blowing into my face. So I got this little fan here. I think somebody gave this to me. They just wanted rid of it, and it draws 0.4 amps, so not even a half an amp. And the welder takes up 20 amps, and I'm welding on a 20 amp circuit, so I'm probably right at the max of the breaker wanting to pop. But it's never done it yet, so I'm happy about that. And I continued to use this fan, and it actually worked quite well. I was really surprised. I wish I'd have done this a long time ago to keep all the smoke and stuff out of my face, and me breathing it. That's not good. You don't want to do that for long periods of time. And I have the deck flipped upside down. You'll see it later in the video. And I need a magnetic fan, or figure out a way to put magnets on this one. Here you can see it. So I still have a lot more welding and stuff to do underneath this thing, and I'm just going around and cleaning off all the grass. I read somewhere, or heard somewhere, that grass is actually acidic. I had not heard of that before, but it's not as bad as road salt, but it definitely does rust things away, and this deck is a prime example of that, and neglect. So you can see me, I'm just cutting out all these pieces here now from underneath the deck. I'm just trying to get the old steel out, and so basically that will keep any future rust from starting by me taking all these pieces out. It doesn't give a place for water to collect underneath here and grass to sit in and stuff. But I spent 3 or 4 hours just getting all of this steel cut out of here, and it's much better than what it was before. You know, this is why you try to take care of things, and obviously some people don't do that. So I just keep, I'd say I had a hammer, a screwdriver, and a pry bar, and the angle grinder. All those tools to take out all of this steel, and there was definitely more steel in here than I had thought too. But I'm really glad I did it. All these pieces of steel under here would just collect things, and they would rust out even more. And I plan on using the truck bed lining to paint the underside of this at some point. We've been having a lot of rain here lately. It's springtime, so that's to be expected, right? This brush hog's definitely been a lot more work than I was planning on, but you know, I don't really want to give up on it. I mean, the gearbox is still fine, and someone had actually commented on the previous video to this one where the stump jumper, the entire stump jumper that's under this thing, was all loose, and they had said that no gearbox oil change, and actually I had already done that. I just haven't, I didn't film it at the time because it was pretty dark, but I have done that, and we changed the gearbox oil with Napa, I think it's 80W90 gear oil, and you can buy it for 30 or 35 bucks for a 5-gallon bucket of it, which is quite cheap, and that's what we use in pretty much all the tractors that we have. Just put that stuff in, and it seems to work fine. We also put some AT205 reseal in also to help seal any seals that might leak. There was a tiny bit of oil, I guess it would be old oil or grease, under this, which it wasn't bad at all, but you know, I don't want to have a seal go out in this thing. I mean, fortunately, if it did happen, I'd know how to work on it and whatnot. But, you know, if I can avoid it, I'll do so. I'll try my best to avoid it. So we're just doing more and more cutting. It's just me working here, and it seems to be I'm almost done. I'm getting closer to being done, over halfway here. And I was kind of surprised how much they didn't weld underneath this thing. The top side of the brush hog was all loose, and that's obviously not good. So I think that's about all I have to say for this video. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more, and we'll see you all in part 3.